All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 22 of Sports with Skiz. This is a very special episode. We would like to welcome on a very special guest, athletic director at Tennessee Tech University, Casey Fox. Casey, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For those who are listening, Casey was the first person to kind of give me a shot last year when he was the deputy athletic director at Montana State. So he's kind of what pushed myself to go ahead and make this platform here. So really appreciated or appreciate you in that sense, Casey.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I could help out in any way. Obviously, anybody trying to get started, if you have any little bit, to help them out, then that's meaningful and it warms my heart, I guess, so to speak, to hear that are moving forward and part of this. So I'm glad to help in any way.
Absolutely. But I did want to just start off, first of all, for our listeners and people, who might not know who you are, Tennessee Tech. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe some of your key roles that go into being an athletic director at a university?
Well, yeah, to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out a lot myself. I think I've been here a little, 4 months, here in Cookeville. Um, but yeah, obviously, I oversee all of our athletics departments. So, the chief administrator, chief, executive, whatever you want to call it. And I sit on the president's council here within the university. So technically, I guess I'm a vice president as well. So, integrate myself into the university, into what we are from a day-to-day standpoint. We're a department that is needs to be partners and an integral part of the university. We're not large enough to stand on our own in terms of functionality and such. So, we work with university advancement for fundraising and communications, university communications, on things, the president's office, student affairs, academics, everything is we're tied into it because while we're functioning as a Division One athletic department, we're not, like I said, we're not a big department in terms of sheer numbers like
Hmm.
UT, down the road in Knoxville, probably has a lot of standalone departments. We work within the university system for a lot of what we do. So, yeah. But day to day, like I said, oversee all aspects. From the program side, the coaches, talking with them and making sure they have what they're needed to compete, and to the admin side and making sure that we're here to support our programs. And that's what I believe in, student athlete experience first and foremost.
Hmm.
How do we make sure that is being accomplished to the best of our ability? And how do we support our programs to give them the best experience, the student athletes that I'm talking about, give them the best experience possible. So,
Hmm.
that's kind of what we do and what we focus on a day-to-day basis.
That's
Hey,
cool. Oh, go
Casey.
ahead, Knock.
Oh, sorry about that, Mike. Yeah, Casey, 4 months in, this isn't new to you, though. How do you start from scratch and kind of rebuild the foundation? Where does that foundation begin? And if I can make the question a little tougher, you're being the architect. Let's without you, what are the pieces to put together, and how can you do that in such a timely manner?
Yeah, it starts with the vision from the top down. What President Oldham, President Phil Oldham here at Tennessee Tech, brought me on board, and what his vision for athletics was is to really be that kind of front porch for the university. How can we help give exposure to the university, outside of Tennessee, and athletics has that ability to do that, especially from a football, men's and women's basketball, to a degree, baseball, that have that more, the visibility from a national perspective if you get into the national tournaments. And so, where it starts is that, how do we become an asset to the university. And it starts with the vision of, the most important pillar of what we do and everything we did, like I said earlier, is the student athlete experience. Everything should start there. You know, how do we give the student athletes the best experience we possibly can? And that means on and off the field of play. On the field of play, how are we competitive? How are we investing into our programs to realize the vision that I want to see that we had at Montana State? I spent 8 years there, and that is competing year in and year out for conference championships. So that's what I want to instill here. The first question you should ask yourself, in working here is this what's best for our student athletes? Is this what's going to give them the best experience? And the answer is yes. Great, let's move forward. If the answer is no, okay, why and how do we get to the answer of what's best for our student athletes? So that dictates a vast majority of what we want to do. But my vision is to be competitive, and try to get to a point where we're investing into our programs to be competitive year in and year out at the top of the conference and competing for conference championships. It takes time. We got to build it from the ground up here a little bit. Um, just from a standpoint of football, I mean, football is 8-0 right now, have won 13 in a row overall. We're ranked eighth in one poll, ninth in the other.
Mhm.
And, the fans, we haven't gotten the fan support that you would hope to yet. And that's okay because it's not going to happen overnight. It takes a while. It takes time to get people to invest, their time, their effort, their money into a program, and they want to make sure it's worthwhile. So we got to continue to do that. So building from this department, I used a lot of the tools I've learned, over my years, not only at Montana State, but other stops, that I've had at Washington State and Utah, the Naval Academy, all those, over the years that you take all those experiences and you take all that, you take the good and the bad, and you try to formulate a vision and a plan and to a degree, a philosophy of what you want to become. And it's about instilling that, having belief in what we are doing, and then hopefully seeing that pay off. Obviously from a football standpoint, the foundation was laid before I got here. I've been here 4 months. I didn't, the team was formed and everything else, but it's how do you then take advantage of that, right? We're already underway with a stadium renovation. So we'll basically have a new half of a stadium. We'll only have a half a stadium this year. The west side will be completed, by the beginning of next year. And how do you capitalize on this success and then reinvest to keep it going as we move. We're going through a transition. We're moving from the Ohio Valley Conference this year into the Southern Conference, the SoCon next year. So as we go into the SoCon, how do we go in there, hit the ground running and take advantage of what we're building this year to into next year, into the year beyond, beyond, beyond. And that's, obviously at our level, the FCS level, there's some programs that we want to emulate. Obviously the top being North Dakota State. Everyone's trying to get there, right?
Right.
But North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State, all have programs that we are striving to get to and achieve. And it's not just getting there, but it's staying there. And that's what our goal is going to be moving forward. So, from our other programs, we have success. From soccer, just won their fourth straight OVC conference championship this past Sunday. How do we continue to invest into them and going into the Southern Conference, which is going to be a challenge for us, and make sure again we are hitting the ground running. But we've got to invest in the programs that are being successful, but we also have to be ready to invest into those other the other programs to elevate their game as well. And that's the vision that I've got. But again, going back to the basic, tenet is student athlete experience, and that should be the first and foremost of everything that we're discussing and moving forward with.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I mean, building a winning culture. I love to see you guys turn into the North Dakota State, uh, build a predominant program and have that, kind of that Alabama level of consistency. I'm excited to see it moving forward.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal, and that's what we're going to try to do. Not just football, but for all of our programs. I think we feel, I feel that if we can have a successful football program, that will allow us to invest into other programs as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And kind of piggybacking off that and your work that you did at Montana State. So I know that you helped raise a jaw-dropping $26.5 million for their new indoor and track facility that just recently opened, I believe. Can you kind of talk about the importance of partnerships, like both corporate and community in the athletic department sector of things, especially being at the FCS level?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's paramount to make those connections to really show the play where you fit into the grand community as a whole. Not only the community of the university, but the community for us here in Cookeville and the Upper Cumberland, Middle Tennessee area. Um, you know, we're at our level, we're not going to be able to do it without community support, and that's just the way it is. We don't have the $75 million television contracts that
Right.
we can lean on those things, so we have to go out, we've got to grind, we've got to find and cultivate those partners, whether they're alumni, whether they're community members, whether they're business members, and show the value of Tennessee Tech athletics, and what we can bring. A lot of it is potential right now. I think you're starting to see it turn. You're starting to hear in the community, people talk about the football program, you know, where I think when I got here, you saw some purple, but not as much. The other day I was flying out of Nashville and I saw some Tennessee Tech gear in the Nashville airport. And you're starting to say, okay, here, and that's what it does. That's what winning will do is it starts to spread, starts to bring people out to wear their gear and show pride that, yeah, I'm a, Tennessee Tech alum, I'm a fan, but connecting with the community to do something, like the project we did at Montana State. And you're right, they just opened, an indoor practice facility. In any real project that we did at Montana State, it was a community-based initiative, and that's how we had to do it. There wasn't, that one, donor that just said, here's, $25 million. You're like, all right, hey, great. I remember the first project we did when I got there, the football operations building, which is now the Bobcat Athletic Center. There are over 450 donors, that made that possible,
Mhm.
and so that's 450 people you're going and you're trying to have conversations and talking to. So, you got to grind through those, and I think that's the approach we got to take here, at Tennessee Tech is. It is important, that's our next project is we want to, initiate a football operations building, in our football stadium to give football a permanent home. Right now we're kind of a hodgepodge all over campus of where we meet, where their offices are and things like that. And so we want to give them a central location, not only, just from a standpoint of functionality, but also of time savings to our student athletes. So they're not traipsing all over campus, going from meeting to meeting or, this or that, but get everything if we can, in a more centralized location, meeting spaces, coaches' offices, locker room, weight room, all that in a
Mhm.
location so that they can maximize their time with the football program, but also maximize their time in the classroom because this is still about academics and this is still about getting a degree. So.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that helps too with you saying like the centralization of everything for football. I think that not only helps, the football team, but also the landscape of recruiting and getting those athletes to come here. Cause I know that Tennessee Tech has a beautiful campus and then that only will help, the fan base pull around them a little bit more too. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Casey, social media, such a major tool in business today. You've been marketing for so many years, several different programs. Let me ask you something. From the Naval Academy, you started there 2001.
Yeah.
What's How do you adapt through the years and like from 2001 to 2025? And can you kind of explain a little bit of what advertising and marketing was like back in the early 2000s when social media wasn't at our fingertips?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it was magazines, whether it was the newspaper, word of mouth, cold calling, how did you make it work back then?
I argue I probably had it easier then than now. I mean, I always laugh that we had the four main mediums of advertising, and that was print, news, magazines, like you say, television, radio, and outdoor advertising, billboards. That was it. I mean, that's what we put our budget in, and okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And yeah, there was some, cold calling, from a ticket sales standpoint and corporate sales. And because at my time at the Naval Academy, we handled everything in-house. So it probably, looking back is easier because people weren't as fractured, they weren't as fractured in terms of where they got their information and where they got their news. It was still, a daily newspaper, right? The Annapolis, the Capital in Annapolis was, I had a great relationship with those guys in the radio station and the TV stations in Baltimore and a little bit in Washington. Um, and that's what we did. You're right. You picked up a phone. The internet was available at that
Right,
time,
right, right.
but you had a website. But in 25 years, that I've gone from there to now here, it's completely changed. Obviously, print is fallen way off, compared to where it was. There's still, I think radio still hits. TV can targeted TV, but obviously, people are on Netflix and Hulu and everything else, right? So they're binge watching and they're not getting, or they record, live sports obviously is one. I think why it's so expensive,
Mhm.
is it's still one thing that people will watch and they can't just fast forward through ads. But what has taken over obviously is social media and how you target and how you utilize, and it's obviously changed. And you got all these different mediums in social media now. At whatever Twitter or X and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all these others, right? So you're trying to target different demographics because each of them are a different demographic essentially, right? And so, how do you hit them all? And that's the hard part is there's still email, but it's funny you do things and people are like, well, I didn't get that. I didn't get that, right? And you're like, yeah, it's impossible to get everybody. And it's almost like a shotgun approach nowadays. Luckily, social media is affordable in terms of advertising. Um, and that's kind of where you're putting it. But I still believe in radio. We try to get it, on to the local radio stations as much as we can. Advertising. TV is more difficult here because we're in the Nashville market. There's no local Cookeville, affiliate, and so
Mhm.
you're Nashville. But I've always said this: regardless of getting it out, we have to give a product that we feel is worthy of people's time, right? So we've got to put a competitive product out on the field, on the court, and really invest because people have so many options nowadays, right? They can stay at home and watch the game. They can, go do a myriad of things that they want to do. And so to get people to um really buy in and to say, yeah, I'm going to give you my 4, 5, 6 hours on a Saturday around a football game, or a couple hours around a basketball game or baseball game, whatever it is, you want to give that so that it's worthy of their time, so that you're going out and you're competing and hopefully winning, winning more and more and more, so that they have a good time and bring more people and spread the word themselves. Because ultimately, if they're spreading the word that they had a great time, that's going to be better than anything that you can probably produce, on social media or any other medium that you're trying to do now.
For sure, yeah. Like I said, it's vastly changing, and I'm actually super surprised to hear that it was easier back in the day. Maybe you know what, I always say this. I was born a little bit after my time. I would have loved to do the print because I don't know. I think social media opens up a little bit of a gateway and more opportunity, but at the same time, reaching certain audiences is definitely difficult. So
Yeah. I
definitely,
wouldn't, I wouldn't, I
it
wouldn't categorize it as easier. I would categorize, and maybe looking back, in my mind, I think it was easier. I would just say, yeah, I mean, believe me, at that time we didn't know any better, and it was
Yeah.
tough, right? I mean, you're still trying to, design things and get it out and hit print deadlines, and it was different. I say it was easier in the fact that it was less fractured. I wouldn't say the work was easier.
understood.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Sticking to kind of like the money side of things here, Casey. Now, I'm not too sure if you've had to deal with this just yet. I know Tennessee Tech hasn't played like Tennessee University while you've been there or anything like that. But when you do play a big program like that, say in football for the most part, and they are paying you to come play there, as your job as the athletic director, do you handle that money that comes in? And if you do, how does that get? Do you disperse that in a certain way?
Mhm.
Does it go strictly to the football program? I've
Mhm.
always been someone interested. I know Tanaka asked, we had a coach on from Old Dominion and he asked that question, but he wasn't really sure. So I figured it'd be the best time to ask you that
Yeah.
question here.
Yeah. Well, I think when you do go play a game, and we do, we actually, in a couple weeks, we play Kentucky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, and yeah, they're paying us. And that goes into support, goes into the general fund, I guess, so to speak. And then, so we have set budgets for our programs, and then, we have revenues that come in and, we allocate from that standpoint. So, does it go to support the football program? Absolutely. Does it go to support the baseball program? Yes. Does it go to support, tennis? Yes. I guess that's the best way to put it. That's how we, do it. Some programs do it differently. I've been at places where and the two sports that can get revenue from just playing games are men's basketball and football. Women's basketball starting to climb a little bit.
Mhm.
But those two sports, men's basketball and football, can bring in a good chunk of revenue from just guarantee games, as we call them. There are places that will say, okay, if you go and play, say, men's basketball, 4 guarantee games, half is going to go to the general fund, half is going to go to the men's basketball program to do whatever you want. There's some that just say, we're going to take it all, put it in the general fund, and we'll fund you the way we're going to fund you. It's school by school, so I can't answer for every school. I can answer, what we do here, what we did at Montana State,
Mhm.
and so it just depends on, who and what your priorities are and what you want to accomplish with it. But for us, it really goes into the kind of general, athletic department fund. And then we have, like I said, we have set budgets that the programs adhere to and hopefully and use those funds, that we set, and we sit down and we will, obviously those budgets were set before I got here this year, but next spring, we'll sit down with all of our programs and we'll go through and what's needed and what we feel like we can do if we need to stretch or if we need to go find, hopefully get more revenues. And that's again, what we want to accomplish is we want to bring in more and more revenue so that we can invest more and more into our programs.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always thought that was cool, whenever a team upsets a high division one and it's like, they got paid $1.1 million to
Yeah.
come up there and beat them. So that was always something that was lingering in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Last year we did that at Montana State. New Mexico came,
Mhm.
paid us to come down there,
Yeah.
and we walked out of there with a win and a big check, and that was
Right.
nice. It's a good feeling.
Right.
Feeling.
Hopefully you guys could do that up at Lexington this year.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yes, that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, Casey, speaking of, I kind of want to build on a little bit of a culmination of what we've spoken about in total. Football, Chattanooga, East Tennessee State. You said you were looking for rivals in an
Hmm.
interview a few months back. Well, your Golden Eagles defeated Chattanooga 45-17. You beat Tennessee State 35-8. You're 8-0, and you do travel to Kentucky here in a couple of weeks. From a marketing standpoint, how do you get your fans to travel to Kroger Field? It's a potential 3.5 hour drive if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So obviously you guys are good. We spoke about a plan and how you build that philosophy, but I'm talking about specifically for this game. Are there any kind of
Yeah.
special, is there anything special considering the fact that it's an SEC team? We're going into a big, this is a big program, a big game.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is, we've been hearing more about that game from our fans and asking about, tickets, how do they get tickets? And we're lucky enough in this game that we get, tickets from Kentucky to distribute and sell to our fans. I think the biggest one is the students reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to take some buses and make some tickets available." And we said, sure. And we offered up 200 tickets, and those were gone, and they came back for another 100. So there's potentially up to 300 students making the journey up there. Our fans are excited about this game. I think it's just kind of what's going on with the season. That obviously we're 8-0 right now, coming into homecoming on Saturday against Gardner Webb. We expect a good crowd. Our tailgates that we sell each game have sold out. That's the first time this
Nice.
year. So I think it's just that building of this excitement that people have been slow to come to, and I get it. I mean, you got to understand over the last, they haven't been a lot of seasons like this here at Tennessee Tech, and that's okay. And it's going to take time to build. And so, you understand people's um, delay in coming out and celebrating it, but we expect a good crowd. But I think as the season has gone on, as we've won and won and won and keep winning, you're just feeling that excitement build. I think that a lot of people, are excited about the Kentucky game and going up to Lexington, and it is only a 3.5 hour drive. I mean, it's not that far, and it's not that difficult for people to get to. Um, so I think there's some excitement around that, and it starts. I think it starts with everything. Our student body's getting excited, which starts to build excitement around town as well. And so we're hoping that, we got this game against Gardner Webb. We got to go to Eastern Illinois next week. Would love to be, 10-0 going into that game. We'll see. We got two big hurdles we got before that, and we don't want to look ahead.
Sure.
But yeah, I think there's some excitement for our team and our fan base, to make that trek to Lexington and see what we can do, and go out there, and it would be, it could be a fun night. We'll see.
Hmm.
We got to play the game.
Yeah. And real quick, Mike, before I let you go, just to kind of piggyback off of that, which is real brief, your involvement, when I talk about your involvement, do you show face at these certain events? I mean, are you going to Kentucky when your soccer team won their conference championship? If you were at the program at the time, I mean, do you show face? Are you there? Do you show up? Do you talk to the fans?
Oh,
It
yeah.
obviously sounds like you're doing a great job if the fans
Yeah.
are coming to you and they're begging you for tickets. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I love to hear it because it's, very, very early in your
Yeah.
tenure there, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do everything I can to be at every event, every home event. I will travel to football as much as I can. I know my time at, just for example, at Montana State in 8 years, I missed one game home and road, from a football
Wow.
standpoint. Try to make every basketball game. And so I will do everything I can to be here. I'm in a little unique situation this year, a little bit. In fact, this past weekend when our soccer team clinched, I was actually not here. I was flying back. My family is actually still back in Montana. My wife and my
Uh,
two sons. My oldest is a senior in high school. And so I actually went back to Bozeman over the weekend for his senior night for his
mm,
football team. So unfortunately, I missed, soccer clinching, but I'll be here for the OVC semifinals, which we host a week from tomorrow. So Thursday, what is that? The second.
mhm.
And then hopefully, they win and advance to the championship on, Sunday. But I try to be, and then in between, I'm going to shoot up to Eastern Illinois, for the football game. I will do everything I can to be at every home, event. Last night we had volleyball. I was there. Tonight we have women's basketball. I'll be there tonight. So yes, because here's the thing. I'm as much as a fan as anybody. I mean, my emotions, ride high and low with how the teams are doing. I'm a terrible sore loser. I don't think people want to be around me when we lose. Um, but I'm as much as a fan of our programs as anybody else, and I'll be there, if at all possible, to cheer them on and make sure I'm there to support them, to also let the student athletes know I'm there to support them as well. So yeah, I try to be there and then try to talk to as many people as I possibly can, and again, if we're losing, no one wants to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. Yeah. So.
I love that. That's hilarious because I'm a sore loser myself. If things start going south for the University of Pittsburgh, I might have to make some calls to try to get you up here. But Casey, I do have just two last questions for you. I don't
Sure.
want to keep you too long. I know that you're a busy man, but first question is, what initiative or accomplishments, excuse me, are you most proud of that kind of helped the student athlete success off the field? At your time, whether it was at Washington State, Montana State, or at Tennessee Tech now. And then obviously, if we sat down 5 years from now, what do you hope you've accomplished at Tennessee
Yeah.
Tech University?
Yeah, for me, I was from an accomplishment standpoint, I've come up through the external ranks, so marketing, fundraising, and such. And so for me, the biggest accomplishments, probably those two, at Montana State was, getting the football operations, building the Bobcat Athletic Center, and then the indoor, funded. Because those had such an impact to the student athletes on a day-to-day basis. And it really kind of changed the look and feel. And I remember, and I think probably the first one, the football ops building, the Bobcat Athletic Center, um, because there were people who told us when we were raising money for it that we weren't going to get it done. They were like, you're not going to be able to get this done. It's too much. We can't do it. We don't have the fan base here. And to not only get it done, but then to turn around and jump, go right into another one and raise even more money for, an indoor practice facility for Montana State and what that means to that program and to the department as a whole. I mean, in our time there, we made two national championship games, and both times, they're practicing between December 20th and January 6th, and that's not exactly, tropical in Bozeman, Montana at that time. And, we're out there, and I remember one time I think it was 17 degrees and the wind was blowing and, trying to get ready for a national championship game. Well, now that program can be like, we're fine. We can go in shorts and t-shirts. We're going inside,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, I'm proud of that and proud of the impact that made on that program. When you ask what 5 years from now here is that type of impact, I'd love, football operations building here. That's my top goal from a capital project. Um, but also to build programs that are sustainable. To build them and sustainable to a point where if you're successful, you're going to lose coaches. It's just the reality of
Mhm.
this, this industry that we're in. But can those programs then, survive and then thrive, and that's what I'm hoping in 5 years is to have that foundation of success here, that there are people trying to come and get our coaches. That we are having success. If we're losing a coach because someone took him, that means we're successful.
Right.
How do we continue that? How do we continue to build these programs from inside out, I guess, so to speak, and have that success? So that's what I'm trying to, the foundation I'm trying to lay here, over the next, 5 years here at Tennessee Tech. And I'd like to, accomplish, a lot of what we were able to do at Montana State.
Love it. Love it. And I think that you could definitely do that, just seeing the hard work that paid off for you at Montana State and seeing where you are now. It's awesome to see since our last conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It was hard to leave, but, excited about this opportunity for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Tanaka, you got anything else?
Yeah, you know what, Mr. Fox, Southeastern Washington, Walla Walla,
Yes.
130 different wineries.
Yeah.
Plug, am I right?
Yeah.
At Washington State, you helped raise so much money for the Wine Science Center.
Yeah.
Can you kind of describe a little bit of what goes on there? What's it like in there?
Yeah.
I mean,
You
how
know,
did you enjoy that? I mean,
yeah, that was a lot of fun. Those 3 years or so I was out of athletics. I saw it as a challenge, really for the first time in my career, um, take on a project and raise the money for a capital project. I was really kind of doing when I made the switch from marketing to fundraising at Washington State, more focused on annual giving and getting people involved. So when I was hired over at the College of Ag for the Wine Sciences program, and they were in the midst of this fundraising campaign to raise the money for the Wine Science Center. It was really unique, and it actually gave me a lot of foundation of how we attacked things at Montana State too. But you know, understanding what it was and the impact that wine research had on the wine industry in the state of Washington. And I did my homework, and I talked to a lot of people that had been in the industry a long time, um, and really what that story told, was, research flipped how they grew and produced wine in the state of Washington. That became, I tell the story all the time. When I left, when I graduated high school and left Walla Walla for college, there were 4 wineries in Walla Walla at that time. And as you said, I think there's almost 200 wineries now in Walla
wow.
Walla. And so the impact of the wines, the viticulture and enology program on the wine industry in Walla Walla really needed a home. And that's what this was. And it was only the second dedicated wine research center in the country at the time. UC Davis had one. And we talked a lot with them about what worked for them and what didn't and how we can improve. And they were helpful. They were really helpful for us. And when we finished that, and I stayed another year after we finished. Some Fridays would be really fun in the wine research area. They'd take the research wine out and have us test it, and some was good, some was bad, depending on what they were trying to do. But it was a unique experience, and getting to know the people in the industry and getting to know what wine was about and how Washington State University impacted their business. And they were willing to support, the program and the research center because they knew ultimately it was going to come back to help them. And so, you asked me earlier, what was proud of, in my athletic career. That's probably one of the big ones I'm just proud of in my career as a whole, and knowing that and knowing the impact it makes on the industry. And, and every time I enjoy, a good glass of wine, always from Washington to the best of my ability. I think about that and think about my time, with the College of Ag and the V&E program.
Why did the great move to Walla Walla?
I do not know.
Because that's where the best bunches hang out.
That's a good one.
that was awesome to hear. I always remember playing NBA 2K, and you could choose. I think it was Walla Walla Community College was one of the schools that you could choose on there. So that was
Yeah.
awesome to hear. But Casey, we really do thank you for your time. We'll let you get back to it. We know you're a busy man, but you made me a big fan of Montana State, and now I'm a huge fan of Tennessee Tech University. It's much easier to get to from Pittsburgh than it would be
Yeah.
to Bozeman. So we were already discussing maybe coming down there, checking out a basketball game or so, and getting
Yep.
us some Tennessee Tech gear.
That'd
So
be
you
great.
got
If
two
you
more
guys
fans here.
please let me know. We'd love to host you guys.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All
Thank you
right.
again, Casey. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
You take care.
You too.
Thank you.